Thank you, Itika, for joining us today in today's episode of Mera Pehla Crore. And I'm really excited to learn about your journey because you've done some really, really interesting things. One of my favorites is like the IDEO Fellowship because I learned about IDEO when I was studying about Apple sometime back in my life. And I realized that I think they were the people who coined the phrase design thinking, or
Yeah,
at least the early
publicizing it.
adopters. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Early adopters of that phrase. And that really got to me because I think that's a beautiful way of putting it. And you experienced it. I have a like acquaintance who is a senior, who was an elder brother of a senior high school senior of mine who works at IDEO. So I really got interested in IDEO again. And then I saw that you worked there. So I really thought I will ask a lot of questions about that. But
perfect.
having said that, I would give you the stage to introduce yourself for our viewers, inshallah, and then we can take the discussion forward. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Itika. I started off as an engineer, like so many of us, and very willingly so. I did electrical engineering. I wanted to be a fighter plane pilot back then. So it was necessary for me to do engineering. And I'm born, brought up in Shimla. So lived in the mountains, lived in much quieter parts of the country. Did my engineering quickly in my engineering, realized that I had too many interests and too many things I wanted to explore. And I had the opportunity of actually applying for the first batch of the Young India Fellowship, which later turned into Ashoka University. And the most important thing that excited me about it was they had promised to teach us 27 courses in 1 year. So everything from statistics to art to economics to history. And I'm like, this is my place. And that's really where my scope of trying to learn many things really started. I fell in love with design then, started practicing as a designer, learning like an apprentice from a lot of wonderful entrepreneurs in India. Ran a few businesses in design after that, and then took a sabbatical, went back to studying design. And from there on, then landed up starting my current company, Studio Carbon. So it's been a journey. And there was a little bit of business and a program that I did with Stanford as well. So there's engineering, design, business, and liberal arts. I think next I should do is medicine. So that's a little bit about myself.
I think you've done it all. I saw your work experience. You started with NIT, then you went to IIF, then you went even more part of Nirmal Bharat Yatra. Then you did Stanford that I don't know what to call it, but the executive course as well. And then you also went to NID, and I think you've done a lot of national and international educational courses, which people are not even able to crack one of them, but you've done quite a few of them. So it's a great experience to have. What made you diversify so much into in so many fields, especially for education?
Yeah. So I wouldn't say I was a nerd. I think I was just always very curious. I don't know how else to put it. And I think that's why design as a profession also finally settled so well with me, because I have a lot of questions about everything. And sometimes just for the sake of learning. And it can get very obsessive after a point. So I think it completely just came from there. YF was not a strategy at all. We were the first batch, so we didn't even know what to expect, what it'll become. And because I was getting to learn from such wonderful faculty, I said, let's do it. I mean, ek saal hai. I had 2 job offers that time, and I'm like, what's the worst? I just reapplied to them. So that's really where it started. That's where I discovered design research and systems thinking. And suddenly I realized that this idea where I see so many connections in the world with, different sectors that people may not normally correlate. I'm like, oh, okay, there's a word for it. Design thinking and systems thinking actually legitimizes this way of thinking. And that's really where it was. Then after that, was no stopping. And the idea was never to formally do courses or get degrees. In most cases, I was ready to drop off after I felt like I've learned. With Stanford's program, it was for entrepreneurs. So they allowed me to continue to run my business while they teach. It used to happen over the weekends. It was in Bangalore in person. So I could continue to work through the week and then go back on the weekends and meet some really cool entrepreneurs. So that also didn't really require a degree or certification per se, but it was just like you were learning some really cool things about business. And then NID, again, I went back to because I realized that I had learned a lot of hands-on design, but there are some just foundational things that sometimes it's valuable to learn from. So in design also, I could think a lot like a designer, but principles of color theory, or how do you study forms, I could do it intrinsically, but I didn't have a method to it. So I said, okay, now NID, thankfully, Indian education is not crazy in terms of affordability, and I had saved enough. So I could use my savings and then, say, okay, I can take 2 years of a break and then go back and study at NID. So that's really where it came from, just eternal curiosity, and that still remains. I think that's
completely relate. I think I'm very similar to you in that way, because I've done I've done like 10 odd jobs in my life, and then started like 5 odd businesses in different sectors. Like you can't relate one business to another because it's so very varied. Yeah, because I think I have a word for that now: design thinking and systems thinking. So that is something that I really I learned today. But you said that you were the first batch of YIF, and do you think that it was worth it then, or do you think it's worth it? It's better now, and should people go for it? Because I see a lot of people going crazy over it. That we want to do like the YIF fellowship, and I think it's great for networking. Like you get to meet a lot of people who elite of the elite, and not everyone's willing to go there. It's like a year of your life, even if it's here. So, so something.
See, personally, and I've thought about this question a lot, actually. I think, like most of us find it, right? Certain incidents and accidents in your life, depending on what you make of them, really become very pivotal. For me, it was pure chance that YF happened right at the year when I was graduating from NIT, and it was the first batch, so nobody really knew what to expect. I had to convince my parents to say, just let me go try it. My mother thought we're going to get fleeced, and they're just going to take the smartest kids in the country and do I don't know what with them. And I'm like, it's just a year. They're taking care of all my expenses. What is the problem? I personally, if I could go back in time, I would still go for the first batch. And the reason for that is we were guinea pigs. Everything was experimented on us. There was a structure of the courses and everything, but a lot of things just came as happy surprises. And I don't think we would have done as many courses and done so. Like I had a course in listening, just listening. Then there was another course that we did with some wonderful musicians on translation of music from different countries and different languages, and all of them saying essentially the same thing. So I figured out one Sufi song, John Lennon's Imagine, not Lennon, Lennon's Imagine, and then one Pahadi song and another folk song, all of them saying exactly the same thing. So, and there's no way to explain why that's important, but that 1 year in the first batch was a lot of that. So personally, I would have, of course, still done it as the first batch, been the guinea pigs. But in terms of your question of whether people should do it, it again depends on where you are in life and what exactly you want to achieve. But if there are two things such programs really give you, one, like you very rightly said, is network. It's not easy to access the smartest minds in your peers, as well as the smartest minds in your faculty and mentors in one room. It's not easy. And here you have the biggest who's, whether you're talking about Pramath, who sort of started ISP, or you're talking about someone like Ashish Dhawan, who's been such a renowned investor and now working so much in impact, or the founder of Make My Trip, the founder of Naukri.com, right? Sanjeev and everyone. I could literally talk across the table from all of them. And that kind of network and learning firsthand is exceptional. Like there's no other way to get that access, which I think a lot of academic courses now give you. Like when you're deciding that course, learning from your peers, network becomes a big part of it. But I think the other thing about YF also is we're living in a world where it's becoming more and more apparent about how connected things are. Something happening in Ukraine is affecting the rest of the world. Something going on in South America right now, and we're thousands of kilometers away from there, but that still affects the vegetables and fruits I get access to, for example, right? Or the prices of oil that we are filling up into our cars. It's very, very related. So we're living in a time where being a polymath and being an informed generalist is becoming more and more necessary, no matter how much of an expert you are. You could be a specialist in one thing, but you need to know a little bit about many things, and you need to know how to ask questions to learn about many things, which a program like liberal arts really ingrains in you. I think design and liberal arts have that in common. They really ingrain in you how to understand things for the sake of understanding and then seeing where it goes. So I personally would recommend everyone does it. But if anyone's just, again, curious like you and me, 100%, this is the course for you.
Makes sense. And you put it so beautifully, because it also reminds me of the saying, I think by Shakespeare, that a jack of all trades is a master of none, but still better than a master of one. So,
and nobody completes that line. I'm so
nobody
glad you
completes that is exactly what I wanted to point out, that nobody completes that line. And especially bosses use these lines in corporate, that jack of all trades is master of none. So, but you're not completing, you're not putting it in context that it's still better than a master of one. Because I personally worked in like 7 industries, like very like entry level jobs, but still and I was majorly in sales and customer service roles or operation roles. So I was introduced to the whole nose and house of the industry, even on the entry level, because you can't function on an entry level without knowing these things as well. So that just like helped me connect, like, and if they're selling solar panels like this, why aren't we not selling softwares like this? If they're selling softwares like this, then why are we not selling solar panels like this? And vice versa.
Beautiful.
No worries. And what started this journey for me was personally, when I was reading back in 2015, I was reading about Apple and Steve Jobs and everything, because I was a young kid who wanted to do something of his own. So I did every very normal thing of like learning about the entrepreneurs back then. So what I learned was that Steve Jobs was able to sell Apple too, because he like tried to like communicate his vision that it should be sold like an appliance, not as a computer. It should be in the kitchen, it should be in the hospital, it should be in the grocery, it should be in the pharmacy, it should be everywhere. It should be in the school. For all he cared. And that is why he was able to expand the market of 5 computers to 100,000 or 1,000,000 computers within a span of years, because IBM, the experts at IBM said that there's only a market of 5 computers in the world. And a few years down the line, he came and disrupted that market with his product. And that was only able to, he was only able to do that because he saw that it's not a computer, it's an appliance. It should be sold as a refrigerator. And when you ideate with with products, I think they're able to sell well. And that's what every startup does as well in today's world. We're able to disrupt the market. But you did YIF in, I think, around 2013, if I'm not wrong.
2011. Even earlier.
So exactly. So you said that you were able to access the likes of like Naukri.com founder, Make My Trip founder, before the startup culture was a big thing, I think.
Big thing, yes.
It was still there, but it was not as big as it is today.
It wasn't as big.
We did not have a headline every day that this startup got funded, that startup got funded. I think
so. Your story wasn't made. Wasn't made. I think back, or it wasn't popular enough, even if they were. I'm not sure if they were around. But you had the Flipkarts, you had the Amazons. So this was starting up. We were still very, very early on.
Yeah, and so what were the conversations like when you were not talking about startups?
With them?
With them, because now I can just imagine that whenever they come across people, everyone's talking to them about fund my startup or fund this startup, this and that. But when that was not a big thing, I think the conversations might have been slightly different with them. What were people talking about?
They were about life and courage. A lot of the conversations were that. They used to come, they used to spend a lot of time with comfort talks and things like that. And it was very interesting because now that you're asking this question and I'm thinking about the kind of sessions we would have, a lot of it was about the choices they made and why they made those choices, even when it was not normal in the world at that time. Because, we're talking about 2011, where it was not normal for us to think about startups. The time that those guys started, the whole idea of World Wide Web and the internet was still very nascent. And you're talking about these people out from DU, just freshers, and still seeing an opportunity and creating a digital product out of it. It's quite uncanny. So I think a lot of the conversations were just being misfits and doing things that they at that point felt like doing, and then what brought in the resilience? How did they stand against, the tide in every which way? How did they raise funds? So more than practicalities, a lot of it was around attitudes and things like that. I think that was also one of the main things I learned from all of them, where just in the choices I also later on made in my life, it wasn't so much about calculation, but kind of balancing out between your intuition and also what you see in the world that somebody else might not be, and then just going with it and seeing where it goes.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's but yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And I think choices, like circumstances and choices, I think are the two pillars of anyone's life that can shape it.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
But my problem with people in general is that they stop making choices and they start following trends, whatever the trend might be. And like, if you're not choosing for yourself, you're just sheep. That is you can choose the same thing, but your choice has to be informed. If you're just choosing because everyone is doing it, then it's not a choice, it's a trend. You're following a trend. You're not choosing. You can't choose a trend. You follow a trend. But you're choosing to follow a trend, if anything, but it's still a trend.
Yeah.
But you're not choosing.
There's a word in... Right. There's actually a word in systems that we have for this, in systems thinking. It's called signals. So there are trends and then there are signals. Signals are like these undercurrents that hasn't really become something that the mass trend is. What trend is something that many people at the same time are doing, the same activity that they're doing, the same thing that they're following, the same behavior they're showing. Signals are the opposite. Signals are a smaller group showing these behaviors, but those have a tendency in the future to become big. So to give you an example, if a trend right now is just the statistics of how many people are going to have access to smartphones in the world, India is preparing for its next 500 million right now for people to, in terms of having internet and smartphone access. Then your trend is going to tell you that everyone's going to have phones and we should be building out these apps and solutions and SaaS-based services, which allow them to be able to do X, Y, Z things on their phone because there's a big market. If you look for a signal over there, you are realizing that while everyone has access to phones now, there's also a lot of screen fatigue creeping in. There's a lot of these little, sparks happening around the world where people go to restaurants where you have to put your phone and lock it up, where there are dumb phones coming out in the world, where there are applications coming out where you can lock your phone and you can't do anything with it till the time that you've set out, for example. Now that signal is going to become more and more mainstream in the future because of just how much we are on our screens. And if you already start thinking about that signal now, you could probably be a market leader in a solution towards that signal.
Yeah.
I think that's where the difference lies between, what you're saying with choices. And it all just comes down to almost observation. I think one thing which I do a lot I wouldn't say whether I want to follow or not follow a trend for the heck of it, but every time we should all stop to ask a why. Of why am I wanting to do this? Just one why sometimes is all it takes for you to know if you're following the trend for your own sake or for a reason that even you're not proud of.
It's like, it's fine to have leisures and like just silly trends to follow to make yourself happy. I don't have a problem with that, but like when I dropped out of high school, so there was a lot of backlash from the society in general, not just from my family. So it was just very difficult to navigate through because I had to support my life in that point of time. I did not have the leisure of sitting and studying for the next couple of years before I start working, start earning. I started off earning like 5,000-10,000 rupees, but it was very important to earn even that amount at that point of time than to sit and just earn nothing. And I think, and having done walked that journey now, I can look back and tell anyone that you don't need college. You don't need it. You like you said, you did a lot of design jobs, and then you realize that to polish your skills on another level, you went to NIT. That is a more structured approach. You did the work first, and then now you're looking to refine it. That's a different thing. You can't start from the best. You waste time. Then when you wasted some time in college in a course that you did not want to do or did not understand, and now you're just like, oh, I don't even like this. What could you have done to ensure that you do what you like? You start working first. You start working odd jobs, internships, and everything, and figure out what you like better. and then you follow that. I don't know who normalized the culture of like going to colleges right after school. Like there's no breathing.
I'm even more alarmed by the culture of, going for a master's program right after college. Because I'm like, you need to, education is such a secure space where you don't get the real world experience.
Exactly. What are you doing the master's for? How are you becoming master without working on anything in your life or in your entire life? And I just like, I'm very brutal when it comes to these things and might offend a lot of people as well. But I think that people nowadays are just like kids nowadays are just choosing masters as an option to extend their childhood. They're not in it to learn or anything. Because if this do their masters, nobody's going to question them why they're not working, why they're not doing anything with their lives, why they're not getting married, why they're not like making nothing.
It's an escape.
Is going to come. It's an escape. And it's the fault. It's not even the fault of the child. It's the fault of the parent for putting so much pressure on them. Ye karna. Let them do their let them have some space.
So, but it goes so deep, no? I mean, we can say this now retrospectively. That's one of the things that I always feel about, chatting in podcasts and all. I can say a lot of things very comfortably now because I've seen how life unfolded. You've seen how life unfolded, right? But at the times where we made the choices that we did, we didn't have this amount of foresight of where things are going to go. And I think it's not even courage. I think sometimes there's a lot of energy that goes in fighting that system. I mean, this is back in 2013, actually, not even at a time where I had done 200 more things. I was still I had 5-6 things that were different that I had done. And I was in an interview for a program with a very, very senior director of Asia and Europe for a global multinational that works in social impact. I won't name the organization. But he was interviewing me and he's talking to me and I'm telling him, I've done this in sanitation. I had just finished the Nirmal Bharat Yatra. I was starting to help Poonam with running daily dump. And a lot of this stuff was going on. So waste, sanitation, learning from liberal arts, using storytelling, they're not disconnected actually. We're still talking about, our cities, built environments and things like that. And he literally took my face, told me, I think you're very fickle-minded. I think you need to figure your shit out. Sorry for the word, but he told me that in my face. And this is someone so senior who had achieved in life, who is doing some wonderful work in impact. And that's really where I wanted to head to as well. And when you have someone like that tell you for a second are like, okay, is this advice? Do I need to take a step back and be like, okay, maybe I should just focus? But at that point, just my desire of the kind of things that I was exploring was so long, just so fired up that I didn't take a step back at that point. But if I had, then I wouldn't be doing what I did. So a lot of that will come in our lives. And it's not that easy, I guess, to also not, sometimes we're just ignorant. We don't even know that we're lost. We don't even know that we're making uninformed choices. And when I started looking at education on how to fix this kind of a thing, you realize you need to go all the way to the age of 0 to 5 for a child. If you really want to get that attitude in them of just fearlessly exploring and all. So there's 100%. A lot of work we have to do.
100%. But that's what I'm saying. So we can't go back and solve anything, like you said. And because it all makes sense in retrospect. People who have grown, people maybe in our generation, from let's say take the age bracket of 25 to 40, in this 15 years of age bracket, people have seen a lot of changes in their lives. And I think they can be the next force of normalization, that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay because they do repeating the same things. They're still worried about their kids not going to school. They're still worried about the kid not getting a job. They're still worried about their kids not doing well on themselves. Even if they're not their kids. So I think what people do, like you said, people are ignorant. People might go through a very important lesson in their life and they don't learn. And that is the problem. They don't stop and ask why. They don't stop and ask how. They don't stop and ask what. And they're just letting life pass by and not living it. And I think because boss ne bol diya ye kar lo, mummy ne bol diya ye kar lo, papa ne bol diya ye kar lo, it's just following instructions, but what of their own? And we need to take a step back and choose our instructions to follow, rather than just following instructions blindly. Because you will need to follow instructions. Nobody is an expert.
Yeah. And that way, identity also is a myth. I mean, at the end of the day, even you and me, I mean, we are whatever we've become, a product of our circumstances, where we were born, how we grew up. So it's not like anything is really my identity, but I've just acquired things. But if you just pause and reflect, then you can always pivot. You can always reset a lot of these things. Yeah.
Exactly. 100%. But something that you said, which I found really interesting, and which I talked about in a previous podcast of ours as well, that the mobile thing, that there's a signal of mobile apps. And I think I don't understand why there's so many big companies, there's so much money in the market or Indian market right now, and nobody's building a mobile company. We don't have a good Indian mobile right now. Something that we were talking about before our podcast, you and I, that people should take business outside of India rather than just emulating something from the outside in India. There should be a smartphone that is global, that is in an Indian origin or like mobile phone, which is globally like distributed, which is like an iPhone killer or OnePlus killer or Samsung killer. If we just able to successfully distribute it within India, it will become an iPhone killer because we are the biggest iPhone market. So it's just simple as that, and nobody's working on that because people are conditioned that we need to make an app become a successful company. Nobody's going the hard route. Nobody's going the hardware route.
But it's also riskier, Sama. It's again much easier said than done. And I've worked. I mean, when we developed a new material altogether with Dungse, we've given 4 years of our lives to doing that. And completely bootstrapped, funded from grants and award money and whatever we could get our hands on, and putting our own profits in it. And now it is at a stage where I have a profitable business model, and now I'm like, okay, I need to set up the first factory for it. So the thing with hardwares against a lot of software-based businesses is the economies are not yet incentivizing hardwares. It's becoming a little more like, okay, with AI now you're looking at semiconductors a little more. You know that you need servers. You know that you need materials. Energy is becoming a big problem. So you have to innovate on renewable resources, which means you have to innovate on a turbine. You need to innovate on a panel. But so far, especially after the Industrial Revolution and once we reached a stage of comfort as a world, then suddenly you knew that you could just build more convenience on top of it with services. So everything, I think, reaches its peak and sort of stabilizes. So we're transitioning in that now. But everyone from investor ecosystems to exits that you can get to how quickly you can put something in the market, there's a huge difference between software and hardware. So it also really takes a lot of just belief if you want to build something in hardware, which we're getting to slowly, but it'll take some time.
But there's like there was Micromax who was doing a great job. Now they went away, and then there was HCL and computers. We don't even have a computer company. So and all of these companies exist, but in a different business model. I don't understand that. Like you could run a small division of things. You don't have to be you don't have to start with iPhone killing. You can start with just penetrating the market over the next 10 years, rather than if it works in 2 years, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Instead of that quick approach, you can just into the market, and then you can see what happens, and you can just survive for a while. I think that's how any like hardware business has been built in the past as well. Like, we can't look at iPhone and say that they sold 1 million units in the first quarter. We have to look at the starting of Apple, of how they struggled to get to that iPhone. And they started
product.
Nobody talks about the fact that they started off with building an iPad in 1997, and then they converted that into a phone. They did not start with the iPhone, and they separated the iPad into two things: the iPod and the phone. And that's how both of those things came about. And but we only talk about the 1 million units being sold in the first quarter. But enough about the phones. I heard you talked about Nirmal Bharat Yatra and the daily dump. I was quite interested about like when I was seeing it, like looking over through your experience. I didn't quite understand because I'm not very into these things, like the social projects that go around the country. So what is Nirmal Bharat Yatra, and how does it work, and how did it work, and what were you doing in it?
Right. So Nirmal Bharat Yatra is what we know as Swachh Bharat Abhiyan now. This was the very, very early stages of the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, like a decade and a half. So we started talking about toilets and hand washing back then. So
Right.
this was long ago. And the Nirmal Bharat Yatra was actually an effort. This is so if you look at even open defecation in India, back in the day, it was quite bad. I think we were at about 70% or so amount of open defecation happening around the country in terms of just the number of toilets getting used or people against toilets that were built. And within about a decade and a half, we're now at about 98% as a country. So this whole movement, and this is one movement, the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan or the whole Nirmal Bharat Yatra, everything is an intent that actually very beautifully transitioned through different governments also. It didn't just fall through the cracks as power changed, as government sort of transitioned from, who was leading earlier to who's leading now. So back in the day when we did it, it was still at an early stage where we were trying to figure out a way. So things around sanitation and a lot of things you realize that are society evils or wicked problems, as we call them in systems, they stem from behavioral practices. They stem from a lot of just behavior shifting that is required. Same thing was with sanitation. There were toilets. There were toilets being built. A lot of that stuff was happening, but open defecation was still a very prominent behavior in and around many parts of our country. And for that, you had to really take a step back and understand exactly why that was happening. Not be top down, not be very entitled in saying that this is a bad behavior, this is ugly, this is filthy, but really being like, hold on, why is this behavior really perpetuating? And that's what we started doing. So I used to work back in the day with a company called Quicksand. It's a design research studio, still doing some very wonderful work. And with Quicksand, we collaborated with the Gates Foundation, with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, to launch a slightly radical program in the sanitation space to shift these behaviors. So we did a lot of design research, went on the ground, spent a lot of time with people, understood their day-to-day lives, behaviors. Simple things like religion would play a role in people using the toilets or not. Where, for example, a Muslim family in central rural India, when I was talking to them, they're telling me, we built a toilet because we don't want our women to go outside and be exposed. Because of just culturally how they feel about it. But another Hindu family in their next door is not doing that. And they're not doing it for hygiene reasons, for safety reasons. They're doing it for completely different reasons. On the other hand, going and having these sanitation conversations where a simple behavior like when I open defecate, there's fresh air. When I go into a park or when I go into a farm, it's all clean, it's fresh air, it's a nice sunrise. And I don't have to get exposed to a very claustrophobic environment in that moment when I'm defecating. But when toilets were built out, they were suddenly asking the same behavior to now be done in a confined small little room. So a simple design of cutting the height of the toilet's walls to half the height so that when I'm sitting, I can still look out was as little a solution as was required to shift behaviors. And the Yatra was a way of designing a carnival around sanitation. So we actually designed a mela. It was a pop-up mela, and we literally on the road with 400 people of a caravan drove through 5 states in India. We used to stop at different regions, set up a mela over a couple of days, and everything in that mela was designed towards behavior change, towards knowledge on open defecation, on menstrual hygiene, on hand washing, and all of that. So that's where we started the conversation and normalizing a difficult discussion around shit.
I've had a close experience with this conversation in the government side. Like my friends were working, my 2 of my best friends were working in QCI, Quality Council of India, if I'm saying it right. So they in 2018 they were doing a study. I don't know if they're still doing it or have been doing it for the past couple of years. But at that point of time, they were conducting a study where in the ground level, like representative of theirs would go to these public toilets and and would click pictures to see the condition of them and to see if they're being used, to see if they're being maintained, to see if people are defecating outside or inside, and all of that. And then there were office people who were accumulating all of that data for the government and like quantifying pictures, on that like micro level they were working. My friends were working, and then there were people who were like quantifying that data, that accumulated data, and then presenting it as a report presented by QCI. So I'm aware of that problem, and I completely understand how difficult it must have been for you guys at that point of time. I don't think even the conversation was that strong back then. And to bring about a like behavior change anywhere, it could be for a business, it could be for the society. It's always a difficult thing because you don't know what is someone's incentive. Like you said, it could be religion, it could be claustrophobia, it could be society, like wo ja raha to main bhi jaऊं, or something of that sort. It could be pressure. So but I think a lot of things should be done in that way, and one ad before a movie is not enough. Like Akshay Kumar comes and says something. I don't think that's enough.
That doesn't work.
It doesn't work, and like it doesn't make sense. You're comparing sanitary pads to a cigarette. It doesn't work. Like it's not a fair transaction. No, like people will see it and make fun of it. People will not actualize it. It's not that big of a
deal. Actually, maybe this. So it's not enough. I don't know if we can say if it may or may not work, but it starts. See, Mr. Bachchan played a very big role in the Pune drive. He really did because of the sort of aspiration we had with him. But just that, of course, was not enough. That has to be coupled up with a lot of these behavior change things done in the background. So it's like what you do with marketing is necessary to put the word out. What I do with design is necessary to shift behaviors. What somebody does with product innovation is necessary to give them a solution once their behavior is shifted.
Exactly.
So all of it is needed.
Yeah. And I think it needs to be done in a more acceptable way rather than a mocking way.
Yes. Because 100%.
Because what Bachchan did was like invite the do boon zindagi ki. It was inviting. It wasn't criticizing. And this is somewhat condescending, and we know how fragile male ego is in this country. So if we criticize it, I don't think they'll learn. I think they'll become more like immune to it.
Also, you'll also realize that it's this entitlement that we get, right? Sometimes from our education, that we're more educated, or which part of the country we're living in, semi-urban, urban, rural. There's a lot of entitlement of I know better also comes in. And I think that extra leg of empathy that you need to have is what is necessary for you to understand behaviors. And then if you really want to design a solution, you design it for that behavior shift. And that's where I think design's USP also lies, 100%. Where if it's not coming from a place of empathy, you will not be able to change it.
I read it somewhere. I forgot whose quote it was, but I think it was design or documentation. It's a form of empathy that you can't document something or you can't design something until you empathize with the end user. It doesn't matter what you want or what you feel like or what you would like and what you know. Even you could be right also. It doesn't matter. But if the
you have to forget all that.
It's a moot point. It's not a real conversation you're having with yourself.
And in this also, it works at two levels. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you. I'll just tell you one more thing. So one is, there are again different levels at which you can persuade people. I mean, design is a lot about persuasion, right? I'm persuading you to use this, to say, I like this more than I like that. There also you can do it at two levels. You can do it at a behavioral level, which is that you really understand their needs, understand their aspirations, where they're coming from, what they want to be, and then tie in whatever you're creating to fulfill those aspirations. The other level at which you can work, which is what Steve Jobs and I think which should be coming in all your podcasts, is that you actually go even one level deeper, where you start looking at people's intrinsic and latent needs, sometimes at a completely neurological or a neuroscience level, and then catering to that. For example, the textures that, and there's a whole research on that, of course, as designers we study, but even the texture of your Mac and what they've been able to do with the aluminium on like a MacBook notebook or the laptop has been mastered to the last grain, where I don't know why I love it, but I love rubbing my hands on it. That little blinking light that tells you that your laptop is on sleep mode has been designed to beat at the beat of normalizing a heartbeat of a human being, so that when I look at it, it makes me feel calmer naturally, right? So that's at a whole other level of empathy where you're just biologically, people are wired like that and you can deal with it. So you could design solutions with empathy, or you could go one level even further where they don't even realize, but they still like it. And that's just neurological.
I'll give you a fun fact about the same theory. So Domino's uses a type of, like, I don't know what it should be called, but some like thing that they put on their pizzas that it's like powder sort of thing. I don't know what it's called, so I'm not going to know it all about it. But I think it's a powder sort of thing that sets on your hand when you're eating that pizza.
Yes.
Particularly of Domino's. So it creates a brand recall after the pizza is been eaten.
With that dust.
With that dust, actually. So pizza dust. So when you when you've not cleaned your hands, but you've had the pizza, you don't have oil on your hands. You have dust on your hands, which is easy to clean also, but it still reminds you of had pizza. So that is something that we actually do, and which it's something the proprietary or something. I don't know, but
for sure.
I learned about it, and I thought that we don't think design on this level, on a real world. When we think of design, we think of machines, but it's not true. Design could be anything, and that's the beauty of design. But coming back to what you were talking about, after Nirmal Bharat Yatra, you became a part of the Daily Dump. What's that? How did you came about it? How did you come about it?
Daily Dump is a pioneer in composting in India. It's a pioneering company that was talking about urban waste when urban waste was not even visible in our cities. So we're talking about 17 years ago. I think maybe 18 now. That's when Poonam started it. So Poonam's also a designer, a product designer from NID. And she's been building businesses that were designed first, right from her NID days. So a serial design entrepreneur from then. And she started Daily Dump with the idea. So I'll tell you fun facts here now. And this is where system thinking comes in. So when we look at our waste bag as an Indian, and it looks very different from a waste bag anywhere else in the world. So in India, what lands up happening is about 40% of our waste by weight is actually food. And the reason for that is we cook all our meals. We eat a lot of vegetables. We're blessed also as a country with a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables. So about 40% of your kachre ka bag is actually just food waste. Now, when this bag is transported to a landfill, a couple of things happen. First thing is your food is more than 80% just water, 70 to 80% of just water after it shrinks down into manure. The rest is just water. So we're actually paying taxpayers' money to transport water from one location to another. Disaster. Second problem, because it is water, the moment I have mixed it in my bag, all the plastic that potentially could have been recycled is now soiled because it is mixed with food waste. So anything that could go into recycling now cannot because it's filthy, because there's rice stuck to it and dal stuck to it and everything else. Third problem, when all this waste is dumped on the landfill, this food, of course, starts decomposing because that's its nature. And it's decomposing in the lack of oxygen. So it's anaerobic, which means it starts releasing methane. That's where our landfills are methane and greenhouse gas emission powerhouses, so to speak, right? And while it is releasing methane, it is still, releasing something that we call leachate, which is like microbes mixed with the water in the food, which then mix up with like our batteries and our sanitary pads and our diapers and everything. And all that toxicity percolates into our soil and then comes back into our food that we grow or goes into our water tables. So when she figured this out, she realized very early on that if we could remove in the equation just food from reaching the landfill, we've come a long way in managing our waste as a country. And she had that foresight of a signal that within 5 to 7 years, this country is going to need help with waste. We can't rely on landfills. How much land are we going to create around our cities to dump waste? And that's when she started having a conversation of what do I do with my waste? Then she brought in behavior change that we just talked about, where she realized that waste is something that we want to be out of sight, out of mind. It's like after it's gone away from my house, I don't care where it goes, right? Yeah. And she's like, no, if we need to change people's perception towards waste, and especially if you want people to keep food waste inside the house and actually decompose and make manure in your house, I need to make waste very visible and beautiful. And instead of creating a nice swanky looking or a very efficient container like a dustbin, which you put under your sink and nobody sees it and it's hidden in a cupboard. We created a composter made out of terracotta, made out of clay, where it was beautiful looking. The Khamba, which is the trademark product of Daily Dump when it started, was a beautiful terracotta composter, almost like a pillar, like its name, that you can put in your garden, you can put in your balcony. It looks wonderful because it's terracotta, it's breathable, so it doesn't smell. You put your waste in it, and then she figured out, of course, what to do with. Composting is actually very easy. We just don't know it.
Okay.
She figured out a very simple mix with just cocoa peat, with which you could actually make manure in as little as a month. Zero smell. It smells like earth.
Okay.
And that's what Daily Dump was about. So everything from systemically looking at food waste and solving that problem, to changing behaviors and saying making waste visible and beautiful, to then actually challenging a big problem that our country was about to face head on. She was awarded by Modi ji against the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan about 4 years back for exactly this. But it took that long for her to be celebrated. But that's what Daily Dump started doing. And this really in-depth systemic thinking of building a business that the country and the world needs is what hooked me to Daily Dump. And I literally, the first email I sent to her after I wrapped up my work on the Nirmal Bharat Yatra was, I'm free these days. I make great chai and I can work on Excel sheets and I can paint pots. I can do whatever you want. Just let me come, So I went there as a volunteer. And within about a week, we realized there's too much synergy. As people, we really connected. She's like my best friend, my mentor, my parent now. Very, very dear person to me. But that's what it was. And goes back to that whole piece of curiosity. There was no strategy. I wanted to learn from how did she build such a business?
Love it.
And then I ended up running that business for 4 years.
Yeah, I saw. And so on that note, I would like to also understand. So I like to cross-pollinate ideas from my different podcast episodes as well. So we had a podcast episode. I'll share the link with you as well. So we had a podcast episode with a person who has who runs a family business of flowers, like flowers that are like used in weddings and any event that you can think of. And they're a big supplier of that flower, in at least Delhi NCR and across India as well. So the thing that they pointed out was that all the flowers go to waste after the event. And it's tons and tons of flowers that they paid lakhs and crores of rupees for are just designed to waste.
Yeah.
And and I was just very confused by that statement, and that why is not someone taking advantage of this? This is a money-making opportunity. It's not a societal opportunity. And so there's this company called Phool who makes like agarbattis out of wasted
flowers.
But I think that's not the only thing that can be done with wasted flowers. And they could use it for composting. They could use it for something else because it's natural waste. It can do something good. It can at least become food for someone. So for some animals, like if it's like distributed in the right amount of time. Like if the event ends today, it should be reached to the animals or the herds of animals by tomorrow. And I think it can still be consumed. And it will help those farmers to feed their herds of cattle and whatever they have without any money. Just the distribution cost, just the cost of the truck that they need to.
Common sense, no? It just feels like common sense.
It is common sense. Why is not someone doing anything about it? So what I wanted to talk to you about was that am I thinking out of my league right now, or does this can this actually happen? You having worked in the composting?
100%. And you're not thinking out of your league. In fact, you're thinking in systems. That's what I love. You are able to bridge that connect that we would, we started our conversation with. This is 100% true. The flower industry itself has a lot of opportunity in the afterlife of the flower. And with flowers also, everything from making incense to actually making perfumes to actually being fodder. There's a lot of different opportunities in which this could suffice. They make great mulch. Even leaves that sort of fall off in autumn are actually wonderful mulch to replenish the earth. The problem in all of these systems and why mulch is basically broken down leaves. So semi-composted leaves. Whenever you find lots of dried leaves, imagine you just go to one corner, just start piling them up. Okay, and just keep watering them the moment they become super parched dry. Put a little bit of like dahi in it every 1 week. Just a little bit of microbes. That entire thing is going to become this soggy, swampy, mushy little ball of like mud and fiber, which is wonderful to replenish the earth. It's great food for microbes. It's going to help the earthworms. It's exactly what happens in the forest naturally. It's where everything that's gone up has now gone back down to replenish it again. So you can do that with flowers as well. The thing with all of these systems, right, is that we created the first part of the puzzle, which is we created the growing of the flowers, the access to the flowers and all. And there's an economy established in it. But we did not create a way to build an economy or what happens after. And the supply chain is the gap. Like all these flowers getting produced, and even with this gentleman, what their company is trying to do, it will be a hassle for them of like what to do with these flowers now, right? Start, and for them, they'll be spending money, I'm assuming, and even transporting it to a landfill or to a farm. And that's where an entrepreneur potentially can see an opportunity to literally just go to every wedding venue at the end of the night and gather these flowers, have one lump sum access of flowers that they then are building a product with. So a lot of these are supply chain issues because we haven't designed our economies to be closed. We've designed our economies to be linear.
Exactly. And I'm so glad that you brought that up because I like in systems thinking. I would also think that we should take inspiration from the world that we live in, the nature.
Yeah.
Everything is closed. You can't. You can't like bury a dead body on the moon. You can't do that. It doesn't allow you to do that. You will bury it here. You will burn it here. You will do whatever you want here, and you will let it go here as only. You can't escape the system. So why don't you think in for the money part, we don't think in those or the business part, we don't think in those terms. But having said that, the guy we spoke with, does not even want to charge any money, does not want to sell his flowers off the wasted flowers. He's just just take it from me.
Someone take it.
Yeah.
That happened to be in Dungse. People are like, just take my dung. Just do something with it. And I'm like, this is a resource. Why is somebody not doing anything with it?
Exactly. And so you can probably talk to Poonam about it. And if she's interested, I can probably make something happen for her.
100%.
And she can probably use tons of flowers for free that she would have to pay for in the market if she goes that route. And she would not find this at homes.
The same problem is with temples. Temples also face the same struggle. So these are very specific locations where you already have this getting produced every day, and you could be. See, the fun thing over here also to remember now is we used to think in systems. All indigenous cultures, all old school cultures thought in systems. I mean, I lived in the mountains. Our entire life and everything that we needed was in the mountain. I used to plaster gobar with my dadi, every month when it was really cold, helped with the dust. We used to make firewood with it. The foods that we ate were locally available. The ghee that we got from the party guy was everything I needed to fix my cold and my skin dryness and all, right? So indigenous cultures were like that. Even with waste, we used to eat on banana. We still do in some regions, but on banana leaves. On all our weddings were done on, we call it pattal in Himachal. It's like those big leaves woven together in a dhab, which is like a gathering of eating. But we did that. And then you just take it, crumple it, and even if you dump it under a tree, it's compost.
It's not waste. Yeah, exactly.
So we did that. We just, in that idea of pace and scale that the West got with the Industrial Revolution, where it was about simplifying our lives, we unfortunately stopped thinking at just our lives. And now a lot of things are afterthoughts. And I think that's with my businesses, that's what I'm trying to change. That any business we create, and that's the biggest, most empowering way to build societies through these businesses, nothing should be an afterthought, and we can turn the tide.
100%. I don't want to sound too arrogant when I say this, but I truly believe that if I get the chance, I think I can I think I have the ideas to solve a lot of water issues within Indian cities where they have water problems, where they don't have clean water to drink. Because it's very simple. Like you said, it's common sense. If you think that there's a society of apartments where there are 100 flats, for example, for lack of better math, uh, for easier maths. So let's say that all flats have 3 ACs on average. One AC generates 1 full bucket of water per night.
Yeah.
So these 300 buckets full of water in a society. And one bucket of water is, I think, approximately 25 to 30 liters.
Yeah.
So if you put that number into picture, that's
I'll add to it. I'll add more numbers to it. And I've been working with a company that builds sanitation, so sewage solutions. They build a lot of decentralized sewage treatment units, which I've completely run on biomimicry. So they're run on creating the patent of that entire innovation is the housing structure they've created for microbes, which just makes the microbes thrive so much that they clean up your water. Your sewage, which is your gray and brown water from your toilets and kitchens, is 98% water. It's just 2% of unwanted nutrients and microbes that you don't want. If you just were able to recycle that, which does not take a lot, to make it ready for your gardens and all, it's just a simple sewage treatment process with only microbes. If you want to further make it drinkable, all you need is a UV treatment unit after that, which is simply a specific light. That's all. So you can actually create, in a completely decentralized way, closed loop systems within that society alone, which hopefully will happen now in Bangalore specifically, which is facing a lot of these challenges. And I've lived for a big portion of my life in Bangalore. And the third thing comes down is natural environment. So the rain. Every time you tap on that, rainwater harvesting. If you just do that much, you just replenish everything that's coming to you.
Exactly.
But we are not there yet. But I think we're starting to think.
But what baffles me is that in Delhi, so there's so much area where there are slums, where people don't have access to clean water. And this AC water is actually clean water. It just took one quick Google search to realize that. It's distilled water. It can be used for washing things. It can be used for like plants. It can be used for even washing of hands and bathing of stuff ourselves. Especially for people who don't have access to, even if we don't go the drinking route, but we can incorporate systems where we can probably try to purify it on one more filter level and make it drinkable as well, like you said. So but that's the point, that there's so much free resources we're not tapping on. We're wasting those resources, and then we're saying there's a water problem. And I think that's a flaw on a government level, because they're not looking into these things. It's not a conversation. You can't.
It's very easy, Osama. It's very easy to blame the government, and I see this in daily dump also.
I'm not.
No, let me tell you what. I know what you're saying. There is a policy level issue. There is an issue of responsibility, because this is a city level problem. But even with waste, this used to happen. It's like people are telling me, why should I buy a khamba when I'm already paying waste taxes to the government, right? But the problem is the way we are living right now and how concentrated we are. No, if each of us does not take charge, it's going to be a problem. And nature's example that you were giving, in nature, every single player has a role to play, right? So we all have to. But all this you're asking because you're asking that why. If we all just intrinsically started asking these questions, there'd be a million entrepreneurs picking up the flower problem, picking up the water problem, and designing simple solutions for it, which I think we're on an upward path. So it is happening. I'm very optimistic.
If I get the chance, I'll do it. But I'm just waiting for the right.
2 business ideas in this call itself.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the right time and because see, with the coming back to the same conversation of signals and versus trends in the market, I think what my biggest learning has been for my own self in the past 9 years since I started my first entrepreneurial journey in 2015, when I was 19 years old, was that I don't have the resources. Even if I have the greatest idea, I could have the greatest, most functional, most logical idea, but I don't have the resources. So it's a bad idea. That is why it's a bad idea. It's not a bad idea because it's a bad idea, but it's a bad idea because I can't execute it myself. So that's the problem that I faced in, I think, 80% of my business ideas. And then I came up with the agency idea because I don't need to invent anything here.
Because
I can just work on other people's inventions or vision and mission.
Yeah.
And I can help enable them. I don't have to be the Maurya. I can be the Chanakya of their story. So it's easier to be that than the Maurya. Even though you might have the courage, it doesn't mean that you don't have the courage to do something of your own. So I think that's the problem. And we don't have systems to enable people who want to create something. Like, for example, why I was talking about the government was that if, let's say, I had this idea, who can I go to talk to about this idea? Because I don't have the resources. I will need a truck. I'm not even talking about the money. I don't want to make a profit out of this. I don't care about the profit. I want to solve a problem first. And it's a big problem. It's a real problem. And it can solve very real things that government is paying like tons of money for. They bring in water from outside of the state in trucks and containers to give it to the people when it is available within the city. So that's something that I want to talk about. And nobody wants to send an email because it doesn't get read. So it's like you're sending an email into the void. So that is where the government is flawed, that they don't have a place where people can be heard who have ideas. And like good ideas to be selected every month.
Yeah.
Not to be awarded, but
so some of these things. Yeah. And some of it is slowly getting there. I think we are, as a nation, we're realizing this both locally as well as in our international ecosystem of Indians, that there needs to be different mediums and platforms where things like this can at least be put out, and then you find access. So, for example, for us, just the Startup India ecosystem, right? Just the fact that we have access to it, with everything that's going on, any matchmaking event that happens and things like that, you at least have a starting point of a dialogue. So it's slowly getting there. The other place where I've started seeing things slowly building up is with universities. Like, it's been a huge win for me to collaborate with university students, where it's a win-win. They get to do something that's real world, that's actually going to get executed. They can eventually take that up as their next job or invention with me as well, or with my company as well. But university becomes another place because they have funds, they have R&D facilities and tools and things like that. And we need to start now weaving in ways of working with them. So with Ashoka, we would do that. NID, of course, does a lot of that. I still go back to teach. Our director has been very active in connecting us with students who are working on things that we're also interested in. But it just, I think, takes a lot of more intent from our side right now. Hopefully and ideally, if it's facilitated more from institutions and governments and organizations, that will be easier. But I think for anyone who's struggling like you are, my suggestion would be, one, doing it with academic institutions, which becomes much, much easier. And second is not going big, but just going to a local mayor or a really small, like, local government to say, let's try this small project. Like with Dungse also, I was talking to local sort of gram panchayats who were struggling with, say, an excessive of cow dung issue, or they wanted to create a rural economy for their dairy farmers and things like that. So saying, if there's an investment, just this much, can we just start trying something out? And those could be two potential ways.
I worked in solar energy company as a salesperson. I can't emphasize enough on the fact that how ignorant Indian people are.
Yeah.
Take the best invention, best technology to them to help them, which is to fulfill their government mandates as well. They will stay.
Yeah. What did you hear that counter? What did they say? Why not?
They can get. Like most Indian response, they can get. The government, because the government even has a policy for schools that you need to generate some percentage of your electricity
of green energy
through a renewable energy, something green energy means. But they're still not doing it. They're waiting for the government to find them and like put a notice on them.
I'll give you a fun fact, which we as Indians don't realize, but when you get out, you start realizing. This has got nothing to do with Indians. This has got something to do with humanity itself. Humans are like that. The same thing happens here. I just last week finished a project with a huge energy company. It's like the biggest in Europe, called Vattenfall. And they've been doing a lot of work with renewables. So they're the largest renewable energy producer in Europe right now. They have a mandate of going fossil-free as early as 2040. And when, I was doing, so we built out the entire system map of the whole sector when we started working with them, because I wanted to understand what's happening between consumers, governments, policymakers, manufacturers like Siemens, energy distributors, transmission companies. And the more I realized, even in a region like Europe, which is already deciding that it wants to be net zero by 2050, as a continent, it has decided that. Even in a place like that, when bidding happens by companies to the government for any kind of project, when they want to lease out land for turbines and things like that, all their sustainability attributes of their project are called cosmetic attributes, even in a region like that. So it has nothing to do with any specific nation. It's just humans. It's like till I'm either forced to it or I'm left with no other option, I will not do it. And say places like Europe are, because of whatever historically has happened, they're in a place now where, they can do this while being economically viable. So, policies and governments play a very, very big role. Trust me, everywhere. We will not follow rules otherwise.
That's what I'm saying. There is a policy. People are still not following it. Because if we think of it logically, there's a policy, there's a government policy. Schools need to have this, factories need to have this, and other institutions need to have, colleges need to have this of some percentage. Yet they have zero. And when someone goes to push them that, hey, let me help you become compliant with the government. They're just like, okay, cool, no. We'll see.
So that's where persuasion is needed. That's where you need to understand what their needs and aspirations are, and then sell the story to them their way. I think that's where that empathy piece will come in also.
But what I learned the hard way was connections to get.
No, I know. See, practically, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, you can't get. It seems very easy that schools are on every corner of this city, country, whatever, and you can always walk into a school and talk to an administrator. I wouldn't bet anyone my life on it. Then go try one.
No, you're talking about schools in Daily Town. There was a mandate in Bangalore where everyone had to compost on site. It had already come in. Now it's becoming more mainstream there, but it was already on paper there. But see, okay, I'll give you a story of this behavior now, actually, a systemic story, which I absolutely love. Comes from India, this story. So when the British Raj was in India, now these guys came from a cold climate to a tropical climate. Now they hadn't seen so many snakes, okay? So they were living over there and they were like, anywhere they go, there's a snake coming out of their table, their cupboard, their office, their this and that. And they were frustrated. And they said, okay, I need to get rid of snakes. What should I do? We need to kill snakes. But we are so few. How much can we kill? So they rolled out an announcement that anyone who, you know the story? Who brings me a snake, I'll give you money. So they would get earnings. Of course, people started doing that because we were so used to snakes, it was easy for us to tap on them. So they started getting a lot of dead snakes and then they would pay people off. And then the problem started going down. They said, wonderful, great policy, very well thought through. A couple of months down the line, the snakes were back and more. And they had 2 snakes coming out in their house every week. Now they had 5. And suddenly they're like, what the hell is happening? And that's why human behavior comes. We were breeding snakes. We became so entrepreneurial where we realized that I'm going to get money if I give a snake, right? So I'm going to start breeding them. And that's where, especially at a policy level where we are running countries, we need to start thinking in systems, because a lot of these are afterthoughts or these are feedback loops that we don't think of. And this is true for businesses as much as it's true for governments. We do the same mistake here. Space debris on the planet is a problem because nobody thought about space debris. We build satellite, send them up, too expensive to bring them down as a company, as a corporation. So it's just lying there. Now it's exponentially broken down. So instead of 1, now there are 2 million debris pieces from that one single satellite. And now any of that hitting anything up there, from my Google Maps to my internet, anything can knock off like this. Right? So these afterthoughts are a problem, but these things have to be integrated and thought through, that people are going to behave like that. People are going to retaliate. Like you said, they'll be like, हाँ ठीक है देखेंगे. वो देखेंगे ही को तो फिक्स करने के लिए हमने पॉलिसी बनाने का सोचा है.
But yeah, it's I think a never-ending conversation on this subject. But what I would like to touch upon next is your experience with IDEO, and how did you find your way to IDEO? How were you introduced to IDEO? Because I think it's easier to get introduced to IDEO today than it would have been 10 years earlier, because it's not very mainstream. Only the people in the know about it. It's like a designer brand of the
It's like a Microsoft or Google of design. That's what I say.
Exactly. So it's not that big. So not a lot of people know about it. So when you tell them about IDEO, they're just like, oh, what does it do? So they're not very aware.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, see, with any of these bigger organizations, one thing which I realized very early on was it's very difficult to have your foot in the door because their ecosystem is so big, their network is so big that anytime they need a new team member or they need anyone to collaborate with, they can already find it in their existing ecosystem through a recommendation of an existing employee or through something that they've done before. So I had actually applied to positions at IDEO before. I would send out applications, make videos and do these radical things to pique their interest and all. Never worked. Interestingly, what happened, and this is something that I'll recommend to anyone who's trying to collaborate with a multinational, is to actually start doing some kind of work with them, even if it's pro bono. So IDEO had a wing called Open IDEO, which used to do a lot of open innovation work across the world. And Open IDEO was doing a project on circular materials and circularity, and they actually needed experts for a phase of that project where people could volunteer that time to help idea generators, literally individuals around the world who were coming up with ideas for that problem of circularity. I think it was in plastic waste, if I remember, back in the day. They literally had an open call saying, we're looking for volunteers who, as experts, can give like 1 hour of their time every week to just talk to these people and then help them solve their problem. So because of my work at Daily Dump, I had so much experience in circularity. So I wrote to them and, very honest application of saying, I'll be that expert. That was my foot in the door. That got me in. So they at least now I was working with the IDEO team.
Right.
And then in that, what landed up happening was, again, I was very confident of, the point of view and the thinking that I came from. So when I started working with them, I actually was working with a lady in Southeast Asia. I was working with a lady, I think she was in Malaysia, where she was actually trying to create a solution against these sachets and those small packets of shampoos and detergents and things like that to reduce waste there. And she had created this wonderful solution of, on a bicycle, she used to have these dispensers. She'd go door to door and with those dispensers, fill up people's bottles for anything that they needed and all of that. So I started working with her. And in this case, again, my curiosity and drive overtook my strategy. And then I was just like, we started talking and I would touch base with her every other day. We designed interviews for her to understand her customers. She would come back and tell me what happened in the interviews. Then we figured out design solutions of what to do with a bicycle. She landed up winning that competition in the end. They were going to get an award money. So there were some 10 ideas from around the world. And she won it in the end, which was a win-win because she won it, which I wanted her to do what she's doing really well. So she landed up winning it. She could execute what she was doing. But that also piqued the team's interest on why did she do that. And then when they had a conversation with her, a little bit with me, they realized the value that came in of what I was doing for that lady in Malaysia. And then I was in touch with the team at IDEO, and the next time that they needed someone with systems thinking, they reached out. They said, we want to do something with you. We have this project coming up. They were doing a global project on food systems with the Rockefeller Foundation, and they needed a systems design expert who could also work with global community. So they reached out, they said, could you do that for us? I was already running the studio by then. And I'm like, I'll do it, but on my terms. So I told them I'll join them as a contract professional, as an expert, not come on their payroll and full time, because I want to still continue to run my studio. I don't want to stop that. And then I kind of was able to get the best of both worlds. Right now, I think some of my closest friends and collaborators are from IDEO, which, like a university, this is another place where you make great network from around the world. Yeah. So that was my route. But I think that's the way to get through multinationals on your terms.
But I think in your, like the pathway that you're suggesting, you need to be somewhat exceptionally skilled or talented in some particular field in order to be able to volunteer for pro. Because even like on companies like IDEO will not take anyone for free. So they will not take they will not tutor anyone. They will take someone who's already skilled at their jobs. They probably refine them further or polish them further or give them area to playground to play.
I'll refine your statement, Asama. I wouldn't say that they need you to be an expert. Like, I wasn't an expert. I just had experience in circularity because I had done sanitation. All of that kind of added up as circularity for them. And then it was also the story that then I sold that, I can think like that. But I think what is a baseline at anything on any of these terms is excellence. That's a baseline. You have to thrive for excellence, period. Everything else, I think being a generalist, specialist, an expert, having a specific experience, all that is a lot more redundant in today's world.
Yeah.
Because as long as I can prove to somebody of, say, what I have done with wind turbines is still relevant for education in another part of the world. As long as I can show people that connection in my pitch, they will hire me. I don't need to know about education for that. But I need to show excellence in my thinking in what I did. And I think that's something that our generation cannot take for granted. We don't have too many plan Bs left as a planet. So that's what I would say, everyone. You pursue with excellence, they will identify. Then I'm saying, they kept my contract with them, just kept from like 10 hours a week and got to 40 hours a week to then I was completely leading that project for them sitting here. So it doesn't take time to build up then. That's what I would say.
But I completely agree with this, that we should be in pursuit of excellence rather than in pursuit of perfection, because perfection procrastination, and procrastination brings laziness, and then you're not able to inaction. So you're not progressing. But in excellence, in pursuit of excellence, you're constantly progressing and you're constantly irritating and trying different things to make something big work. So
beautifully put.
So I think that's the difference, because people even in older generations, I would not give this to younger generations. They either want to do something perfectly or they don't want to do it at all. And I think that's a big loss. That's a like shot that you could have taken, but you just completely end up regretting that. So
this is why design thinking became popular, because design's primary principle is iteration.
Exactly.
We constantly, it's like you think you do. So in the studio, I have this one liner that we all use. It's called do, reflect, do. I do, then I reflect on what I did, then I do again. And then I just repeat the loop. It can't be reflect, do, and reflect.
Exactly. I that's what I tried to do with my own life. And that was a very conscious choice. Everyone around, not one person told me it's okay to drop out of high school, but I was like, I'm done listening to people and I have to take charge of my own life. I can't be a child forever. And I thought that I'll just do it. If it doesn't work, I can always go back to college.
Figure it out.
Yeah. College can be the plan B. College can't be the plan A. So I'd still have to earn. If I'm not able to earn, I will figure that out. But then I will reflect why I'm not able to earn. Because I started off in a call center like job. And then I realized that I'm good at talking, but I don't want to do this like robotic conversations anymore. I'm good, since I'm good at talking, I can probably do sales. And then I spent 3 to 4 years of my life in sales, and that taught me marketing. And with marketing, because I was constantly working in startups across the board. So they were not multinational companies. So everything was hands-on. So when I learned marketing, I learned operations with it. And when I learned operations, and alongside, I was constantly being exposed and being taught tech as a concept. The SaaS products, the no-code products, that of the industries. Like you said, that do, reflect, do. I think just because of this philosophy, I think no-code tools have become popular, because you could not do with the old tech stack. You had to reflect before you do, otherwise you will end up building with the design first approaches, because if you're building a website in Webflow, you can design first. That's your doing part. And then you develop it, because you know this is how exactly it will work. But in other tech stacks, which are more complicated, I think it's very difficult to get it right. So if no code is preset, you know what's going to happen.
I'll challenge that. I'll challenge that assumption. And this is for anyone who is listening, even for you to try. Trying and doing can be as simple and basic as drawing it.
True.
You will be amazed at the moment you put it down on paper. Even if you can think of the most complex puzzle, and you'll learn this from mathematicians and scientists the most. True. Why do they still use a blackboard and do it out there? Because when it's visual and visible, and I can show you notebooks of Da Vinci, I can show you notebooks of Einstein. They all drew. That's the other thing which I think design taught me, which a lot of us don't realize. Humans are essentially visual thinkers.
Yeah.
Like, okay, let's do this exercise. Right now, I'm going to ask you to imagine the whole year of 2024.
Okay.
Now imagine the 12 months in it.
Okay.
Now go from March to September.
Okay.
Tell me what was happening in your head. How were you moving? Was it like this or like this?
I was started from Christmas when you talked about 2024 for some reason. But then when you talked about the 12 months, I was thinking about December. It came down to a whole month. And then when you talked about like March to September, I talked about I was thinking about probably spring and summertime that was happening.
How was it good? There.
Yeah, it was coming from top down.
How your mind is also moving like that. Then you're visualizing what happens that time.
Yeah.
That's prototyping. That is iterating. That is doing.
Yeah, true.
Right? And a lot of times we just try doing it here because we are like, koi risk nahi hai na, andar ho raha hai.
Yeah.
But the moment you put it down on paper, the same thing if you did on paper, that's half the job of really getting your idea to get refined in one version.
True.
And that's something which also we don't get taught a lot of visual thinking, and we rely so much on written words. Like a lot of people talk about journaling as a good practice. It is a wonderful practice, but writing is still linear. You have to do one alphabet after the other. You have to frame a sentence like this or like this, depending on which language.
True.
Visuals are not. I can have something here, something here, something here, something here, and then I find a connection between these two, and then these three together, and now suddenly I have something new identified, and that's do, reflect, do.
I think the design is a universal language, and like other languages are regional in that sense. So, like math is a universal language, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So, like one will always be one, two will always be two. And I feel like I don't think anyone on the planet right now who's been exposed to internet enough, if they see website in any language, they will know where the logo is, they will know where the button is, they will know where the contact is, they will know where the about us is,
very intuitive
policy. Very intuitive, because they've been conditioned to do that, and that's because of design. That's not because of words. Like I can show someone a brand new website in completely another language, and they can still be able to figure out, acha ye wo wala page hai, without even understanding a word of the page, just by understanding the text lineup and everything, and the forms and everything. I think that's the beauty of design, because it speaks beyond words. And
all of us are designers. Anytime you are intentionally creating, the way you even deciding to wear this specific shirt and buttoning it up, that here is design. The way you've decided to anything intentionally you create in the world is design. So we can all do this kind of thinking, and that's something that I try pushing. That's what design thinking and IDEO was also trying to do very early on. But it's just, you can do, reflect, do, and you can prototype and build. Anyone can very, very early. So building a business is not hard anymore.
It is really not, and that's what people realize, is that you don't need money anymore to start a business. You need
you don't.
You need idea, and you need iterative execution. But you need to keep on executing quickly.
Exactly.
Because if you wait enough to perfect your idea, you will lose out on that idea. That is the problem. Because the
market's moving.
Your competition is not the market anymore. Your competition is your own procrastination, because if you put it for long enough on the top shelves, you will probably never visit again. So
Agreed.
That's something that we need to solve for, the speed of execution. And the way we execute things. Of course, that comes from skill and exposure. But having said that, I think we talked about almost everything in your journey so far, and we don't have a lot of time left. So I will quickly like to touch upon the last two things that I want to talk about. The Dungse that we kept referring to throughout the podcast. What is it? What do you do? How did it start? And your studio that you're running right now. And I think that those are two separate things. I think these are the two things.
They're one but different.
These are only two things that you started on your own, right? Or have they been other entrepreneurial ventures?
As businesses, yes, these two.
Okay. So are these funded? Are these funded or like bootstrapped, or how?
Completely bootstrapped. But they are like in a stage of now getting to a different scale, which in due time I should be able to talk about more. So Studio Carbon is a design innovation studio that's based out of the Netherlands and India. So I live in the Netherlands now. I wanted to take Indian design and innovation to the world. So it was a very conscious decision to move here and then, show the world of how Indian thinking and innovation and ideas can really help the world. And we have, of course, a very, very big team back in India as well that does it. So it's a global studio in that sense. Very interestingly, again, going just with my intuition, we started the studio as 9 co-founders, and it's still 9. We're 9.
I've never heard that.
I know. We started as 9 co-founders.
Are you guys like family or like friends? Like, how is the dynamic
batchmates? So we were all batchmates in NID. And in NID, what happened was there's a course in product design, which is what we studied, which is called Systems and Design Thinking. And it's like a 3-4 month long course. That's all you do in those 3-4 months. And this is like the last academic course that you do in product design in NID. That's actually the course why I went to study to NID, despite having got through, like TU Delft and RC and other international colleges. And when we were doing that course, each of us we were in like small groups of 2 to 3 teams, and we were looking at systemic problems, big problems, problems that feel like you can't solve. One group was working on the problem of water. There was another group that was working on the problem of space debris. There was another group that was working on a problem of biodiversity. Me and my group was working on the problem of quality of life. Of what the hell does it mean to have a better life? And we were all inquiring about these problems through system thinking, and then ideally coming up with solutions and ideas and all by the end of the course. In the middle of that course, I think all of us very quickly realized that we're unemployable. The kind of thinking we're doing, the kind of things we want to explore, how much we're going wide up, who the hell is going to give me a job? They're going to tell me, "Job, make this washing machine." I don't want to make a washing machine. IDEO, of course, was one of those options, but even with IDEO, after a point, you're still doing a lot of design research to be all exploratory and look at everything under the sun and then come up with the solution. Very little liberty organizations can give you. So just like an experiment, we were like, what if we were to make a studio? Started as a conversation. There's a very nice place in NID called the Chai Gate. We were literally having chai there, and we're coming up with names. In those names, Studio Carbon came, and then the idea was that like carbon is the essence of life. All forms of life. Design is the essence of the world. All forms, intentional creation. So we want design to be in that DNA of every company, everyone from the government of India, everyone from, the Microsoft and the Googles, everyone from, the smallest of NGO on the ground to every school and what a child learns. Everything should have design in it. And that's where we're like, what if we could do that? And that's it. And then we just started, we had a name now. Then we started meeting every day. We were a batch of 15 people. We started meeting every day, and then slowly, folks who stopped resonating with it started sort of not coming to those meetings, and 9 people were left. And then we just set up 2 companies in India and the Netherlands and said, let's go, let's start finding work. That's
so
how
cool.
Studio Carbon started.
That's really cool. But I think talking to you is like, making me realize like I can relate to you on such a personal level, because I've felt all of these things myself. Because I've been very big on design my entire life. And all intuitively. So like I don't have a professional degree in design, but it's just intuitive, right? Because I always thought that design is so important that it could change the functionality of of any element. Like you would drink the water from a glass, but you would shoot it with a water gun. So the functionality changes. You don't play with a glass of water. You have a water gun. And kids love water guns, and kids don't want to drink water. So like the same kid that loves water guns so much does not care about if he drinks enough water or they drink enough water. So I think that's how important design is in our lives, and it could make things better or worse for anything. And like even in terms of designing your thoughts or conditioning someone is also part of design.
Designing your life itself.
And designing your life itself, the propagandas of the world, the knowledge of the world, the wisdom of the world. It's all designing your life. You can choose to take and believe whatever you want to, but that's your own choice. That's where your wisdom comes. That's where your intellectuality comes in, and your exposure comes in, and your circumstances that have shaped you in your life comes in. So I truly agree with that I've had that same fear in my life so many times. Even today, I think at some point of time, once a day, I think about this, that who will employ me if this does not go well? Because I am I'm so like general in things. I know a little about a lot of things. So,
but I'll tell you, as an employer, you'd be surprised at how much that skill set is valued now. I need you to know many things, because no matter where you are in the game of business, if you don't know something about the others, you will make mistakes.
But that's the thing that I like just on these thought principles, I also came up with another thing that came from the general study of subjects in the world and logic, that exceptions are always there. Exceptions is a universal concept, and if you treat an exception, it could be a person also. Like I've had a very exceptional life in my journey, and if you treat an exception with general rules, exception will fail. But more often than not, it will not be the exception's problem, because you're treating them with general rules. Exceptions come with their own set of rules. Look anywhere, like you can look in English, put I before E except for C. To put in maths, you don't use two negatives will make a positive when if you multiply them, but if you add them, they're still negatives. So or something like that. Like there are exceptions, and people just don't realize it. People want to be so standardized and so general in their approach.
But that's biological, Osama. Exactly. We were hunter gatherers. We wanted to be able to predict. Our survival depended on prediction. So that's the problem with the exceptions. If we still let our our primitive brain sometimes take over and not and just go with this urge to be able to predict, the urge to know what is next already so that I can survive. But that's where our cognitive expertise and cognitive brain really needs to be trained to take over. That's 100%, I guess.
100%. But what I was coming to was that you would talk about that there are a lot of employees who value these things. I work for enough companies to know that that's not true. So people are always big on talking that they value this. It's like, we support the startup culture. Oh, we like the founders and entrepreneurs. Everyone wants an entrepreneur until they hire one. So because
you've just not found your match. That's all. That's all I'm saying.
That's also true. But I'm not close to that idea. But what I'm saying is that if someone used to hire me for sales, I used to be involved with the marketing of that company. I used to be involved with the tech of that company. I used to be involved with the operations of the company. But I used to provide some incremental value to that company in terms of a lot of things. But if I used to fall short on my sales target, they used to be like, oh, what have you done? What have you done? So they were not considering any other thing that I was bringing outside of my KRAs. That becomes
so that's a thing. Yeah. And I think that I'm glad you brought that up, because I think as an organization, this is in the studio also with everyone who joins us, right? Like as a studio, we didn't narrow down. We were 9 people. We were like a mid-sized company already when we started. Like the European studios are like 10 people is like decent big already. So we were already there. So because of that, we had the liberty of experimenting and exploring. So we did all kinds. Even now, we're an integrated design studio. We are not like a product design studio or a graphic design studio. Because the moment you work, whether it's with governments or startups, they need a story, they need a brand, they need a product. All of that needs to be woven with one another. They can't be separate, right? So when we started doing this, a lot of teams and designers and talents that got attracted to Studio Carbon was because they could be generalists, even as a designer here. Because they're like, I can add value here also, there also, etc., etc. So I think there are companies that are slowly starting to do that. One thing which we realized as an employer, I've realized is these are things that have to be a part of your KPI. There has to be ways of being able to measure all of these adaptable, intrinsic, resilient things that you do that don't have a direct, tangible outcome of revenue or outcome. And that's where a lot of, the frameworks that we built out with quality of life, we actually took them to design some of these intangible and measure some of these intangible behaviors, put a number to it, and then assess people not just on, this so many projects executed or so many projects brought in or revenue generated, but actually on all of these other things also, because in the long term, that's what's going to build the culture. That's what's going to make the studio grow to an extent where we become redundant. So I think it takes a little bit of, again, from an employee's perspective, a responsibility on all of us to have, but it is possible. It is doable.
Yeah, 100%. I tried emulating that culture within my team also. Miserably failed. because I am open-minded, just because I am trusting, I work with a trust-first approach, does not mean the other person will come and deliver on the same thing. So I thought I made a mistake of thinking that people that I was hiring were like me, and they will work with integrity, and they will do one thing plus other things, and they could not. They were involved with other things bare minimally, and then they did not even do their own job that they were hired for. It works. I understand where the employers are coming from as well, and to like been on the both sides of the table.
Yeah, I mean, you need to be able to pay salaries at the end.
Exactly. If someone, especially in a small company, if you don't do their job, if people don't do their job, you lose the project. If you lose the project, you lose the revenue. If you lose the revenue, how are you going to pay? Forget about yourself. How are you going to get paid yourself? As an employee and as an individual contributor. So I think that's important too. I don't blame anyone, but I think that there's not a defined role for a generalist, that you come in and you work as generally as you want, and as experimentally as you want, and as innovatively as you want. And
if I could give one advice to anyone who's starting new companies, and they want to build the Apples of the world and the Googles of the world, they need to integrate this into their companies. That's something that I'm a very, very strong proponent of. You need a very beautiful balance of generalist, specialist. In fact, we had created these really nice role definitions when we talk to talent in the studio, where we said, depending on, you could either be someone who loves doing one thing and excelling. You could be someone who wants to switch between things. You want to be someone who wants to learn, get inspired, and then build your own thing. There was a position for the studio for each of them. So we didn't say that I'm looking for a graphic designer. We said, which one of these personas fits you? And I think anyone who really wants to create an innovative business, this has to be a very key ingredient in that, to have generalists like this.
True. But I think I've realized the role that is still in today's real world widely acceptable among industries that is somewhat similar to what I want is the role of a consultant. They don't seem on someone's payroll, but they are allowed to come in with great ideas. They're heard, they're taken seriously. They might be ridiculed for their ideas, but they're still allowed to come in with the ideas.
But you have to build a lot of credibility before people can do that to you.
Yeah, true. And so that's where I think my experience of building my own things came in handy.
Yeah.
And now people take me somewhat seriously, which I'm very grateful for. So, but last thing I want to touch on is Dungse. How did Dungse start? I think we covered Studio Carbon. And how did Dungse?
It's as absurd a story as the rest of my life has been in this conversation. Sorry about that.
I don't think it's absurd. I think you're just in very intentional charge of your life. I think you're living intentionally rather than just living by the rules. And you're not even breaking the rules. You're just
like making my own.
You're just following the rule that you want to follow.
Yeah. Agreed. I think so design makes you do that. Design, I think, is an attitude. It's not a skill.
Exactly. That's why creative people who will show wearing funky clothes and funky shoes and have.
I should have come with something stranger then for this call and looked a little bit of my part. So for Dungse, it was also very completely, I think everything we talked about, it was very systems, curiosity, try things out, iterating. It was born out of all of that, really. It was almost another Daily Dub in the making that ways. So what happened was we were, this is our first year of running the studio. We're just starting off, so we're still getting smaller projects and things like that. And we have a lot of time at our hand. And we're building a lot of our own work. So we were still continuing to work on the water project, on the space project. We were doing these pro bono things with ISRO. We were doing these pro bono things with the Sarabhai Center and things like that. And in that process, what happened was I was in conversation through some workshops that I organized for the municipalities here. I landed up getting in touch with a department that works for birds in the Netherlands. They actually design things for birds here. And when I met the head of that department for a meeting, I made a presentation to him to tell him how design could help him. And in that presentation, very intrinsically, one of the ideas that I had given was to play with cow dung as a natural material to build birdhouses. And for me, it was a very obvious sort of a thing because I mean, gobar and cow dung, I lived in it as a child. I've plastered it with my grandmother. I love the smell of cow dung, by the way, which people used to make fun of me. Now I can say it proudly. But I used to do a lot of that, and I loved that material. And I knew how cozy my house in Himachal used to be when we did that. So I'm like, with the kind of climates you have here, we can probably do that for birds. It was a very random, like of 10 things I said, this was one of them.
Yeah.
And he just got stuck with that. And he's like, this is actually a really good idea. We have so much cow dung. And then he started talking to me about it. I knew Netherlands is a dairy industry. I had just been here for a year. But the more I started learning about it, I realized you're talking about 76 million cows in this much of a country, right? And in that, you're talking more than 50% of the dung we don't know what to do with over here because it's such a small country. You can't even transport dung to other countries because of the risk of pathogens. Right? Yeah. You can't put all the dung into the soil because even manure of cow dung needs to be composted first. You can't put it directly. Yeah. It's too strong. If you have to compost it, where's the land to do that? And when you're doing that, there's excessive nitrates and phosphates in the soil over here, which itself is a problem now. It's becoming a problem of pollution. So that's when I'm like, hold on. This guy is validating this material, saying, it's really quirky, it's very strange, and it's had that opportunity. And at that time, your farmers were protesting. It was so strange. It was happening at the same time. Farmers with their tractors were on the road because the government here had said, we're going to cut down livestock by 30%. Literally, numbers straight down. Bahut greenhouse emissions hai. We have to do something. And I'm like, okay. Cow dung is a material that we build with. It is such a wonderful material. We use it for our prayers. We use it as a disinfectant. It actually keeps mosquitoes away. It keeps houses warm. It's an opportunity. Why are we not doing something about it? And that's all. We literally, no agenda, nothing, whatever little money we were making. I took that, started driving to farmers and asking them if they could give us cow dung. And they were all just like, what's wrong with this woman? Why are you asking for cow dung? One very sweet farmer was like, okay, here's a bag. Like, do you have something to carry? I've carried that cow dung. And cows here, because of a lot of protein that they're given to beef them up, their dung is also very slurry. So I had this slurryish dung in one plastic bag in my car. And every car that was driving past was like, why is this stinking? That's how it happened. That's how it began. And I used my shed where I had to park my cycle as my prototyping hub because we didn't have money to rent out a place.
Yeah.
And we just said that, okay, let's try it out. There's no harm. It's like we were trying all these other things out. Let's try this out. And this guy had validated. And he had promised us that if we can come up with something, he'll connect us to potential businesses who might try this material. We started experimenting without having anything in our hand. We wrote to the Dutch Design Week and we said we want to do a display. कुछ नहीं था हमारे पास product. We said हम display करेंगे 3 महीने में. And they agreed because we showed them visual renders of what it will look like. And then we were like, okay, we have to figure this out in 3 months. So our team in India, my founding team over there, they started doing experiments. I started doing experiments. And very quickly, again, because of just our nature of design and iterating and learning very quickly, we started figuring this out and we had materials ready by the end. We had 16 different variations that we had made of composites by the end, which we took to the design week. It was a huge hit because it was a quirky story. We built a name, we built a brand around it. The tagline I had for Dungse, which I still use, is building the future with shit. That's what we say. And it hit home. There were individuals coming and rubbing it on their cheeks. I have videos of that because the material didn't feel like, it was so absurd that they're like, it should smell, but it's not. It's eco-friendly. It looks great. It's a great texture. And that's it. That's where it started. Then we're like, this looks great. Then we started applying to grants. And then we got a Government of India award, which gave us some amount of seed money. Then we started applying to grants here, collaborated with some big universities in the Netherlands to do more R&D work. And then sort of just from one thing led to the other. The story itself sold a lot. We've been in big business magazines here. We've been on national TV. We were invited to Dubai Expo. We were India, the only sort of woman sustainability entrepreneur there on the table, and we were pitching to sheikhs, and I'm saying building the future with shit, and they're like, what's up with this woman? So we represented India there, but the story really took over. And then that's what really helped Dungse. And at the same time, then we started building Hyperlab, which was another, like, there was a really, so Hitarth, who you also on Shark Tank a couple of weeks back, he came to us as a designer and he's like, I want to build something new. I'm interested in sports. We started studying the sector together, and then I found this opportunity, started building for it. Again, he found small government grants. Then one of us invested in that also. And then we just sort of started growing Hyperlab to now where on Shark Tank it did everything that it did. And it's like a business now on its own, completely started from curiosity for both of these sort of ideas. So it was just like, chalo, apply paisa hai. It's like, what is the worst that will happen?
Exactly.
That's what it was. Yeah.
But is Studio Carbon profitable now?
It was profitable from month 8.
Month 8? Nice.
In the first year.
And how many clients have you dealt with so far?
Oh, wow. I think over 180 odd clients.
Across how many years?
In 5 years.
That's insane.
I know, but then, like I said, we were a team of 9 when we started. We're now a team of about 54. So
in Gujarat,
so our headquarters and most of our team sits in Gujarat. I sit here. We also have remote, because I do a lot of work in Africa as well. We have some remote designers sitting in Lagos. We have a few designers sitting in the East Coast in the US, because we also do projects there. And then we just ramped up our engagement with 2 wonderful designers in Korea, in Seoul. So they're kind of sort of distributed and folks keep coming in and out. But yeah, like over 180 odd clients.
That's pretty great. And even for 9 founders, like, एक तो आपने सस्टेन कर लिया 9 founders को, मुझे बहुत हो गया उसके बाद you're thriving much. And I think it's a great statement for Studio Carbon in itself that
no, we're proud. We're proud.
Weird things can happen and take off.
And,
I think it's a very like non-traditional business in itself in all of its senses. Like the team, the vision, the approach. Have you done any marketing? Like, do you do any marketing, or is it all network based?
It started as a network, because we didn't really have money, right? All our profits were all that the money we were making. We didn't have the liberty to do a lot of aggressive marketing, but because of our work, like because of Dungse, because of Hyperlab, we were in the news. We would get featured somewhere or the other. And that really helped the studio in turn. Like in Europe, I had no base. I knew nobody. I don't speak the language. Just with everything we did on Dungse, people started knowing about me. People started knowing about the studio, and then that built a base. But for the first 2 years, most of our clientele came from our network. So my IDEO network, my YF network. We had a lot of the co-founders. We have folks from BITS Pilani. We have folks from a lot of NITs. We have architects. We have engineers. We have folks who worked in companies also before this as well. Yeah. So that sort of kicked it off. And then I think a lot like whose example were we talking about today? It was word of mouth. It just, when we did really well with someone, then they just ended up telling more people. So we didn't market, which is really sad, because I think we design brands for people and we didn't spend a lot of time designing our own brand. But
completely get it.
I'm sure it happens to you as well.
It is happening to me. So basically, one of my many services that I offer in my agency is building building people's personal brand, like founders and CEOs and executives from MNCs to build their personal brands on LinkedIn, and not just to show off, to just create brand awareness,
do justice to what they're doing.
So what you say, like, your story should be heard on a much larger scale than it is right now. That is the idea of personal branding. It's not to show you as like a high-end pompous person. It's to actually put you on the map and show people how humble you are, and you're open to conversations around the globe, and people can bring you up. You're reachable. That is what people should feel. It's not. People have this wrong idea of becoming an influencer with personal branding. It's not. And I help other people build their brands, and I'm not able to build my own very well.
I know.
It requires time.
You.
And it's just it's just a sad reality that we're not able to help ourselves. So, but that's something I completely.
But I think your work starts speaking after a point. Like, so this year we were a part of Forbes 30 under 30 because of just our work.
All of you
doing the job. No, so we couldn't because 30 under 30 is a limit, and we were a diverse group. So we had one of us, Christopher, who's under 30 right now. He was sort of like the face for the studio. The studio got through, and then he was the one who jazzed up and then spoke about everything that we do. But that was a huge win for us because we didn't have to. I mean, we applied and then we got through, and then the story and everything that we've done so far with all of all the collaborations, all the startups we've designed for, and our own work, which did the job.
Perfect. No, but the sad part about marketing is that it's an ongoing effort. You can't just tell your story.
Do it once.
And then be like, that's what people think marketing is, that people will create an about us page and then they think that, we've done enough marketing. That's not how it works. You need to do it every day. You need to create a recall factor around your brand. And so that people can think back when they hear something and they can think of you. That now, whenever I will see Cowden, I will think of Dungse. So that's the recall brand. So that's what people should, like, if more people know about Dungse, I'm pretty sure it will happen to them as well. And it will become a word of mouth thing that, do you know that some woman is making a business out of Cowden? Like, it might not be as detailed as we would want it to be, but it's a conversation. It
starts the conversation. Yeah.
So for sure. And then people might just Google this, that who is that woman who's turned Cowden into a business. And we should be ranking for that keyword. That is another function of the marketing. So it's a holistic effort. So you know where you're directing the crowd, and then you're trying to show up for that keyword.
Yeah.
But
perfect.
I think we're over time.
Don't worry about it.
I've taken enough of your time, and it was such a great experience. And I think I learned a lot of things for my own self. Even if before our viewers see this episode and learn for themselves. But this was a great episode, really informational, really educative, and I had a great time talking to you, Itika. And I would love to get you on like a physical podcast sometime you're around, or sometime
for sure.
Some of your other teammates, or maybe a roundtable with all of your co-founders, which is very
all the carbons,
which might be very funny.
Why not?
To have like all 9 co-founders on one table. So, I think that would be a great thing to have. But
let's do that. No problem. Thank you for inviting me.
And it was a great honor to host you. And I look forward to your success, and Studio Carbon and Dungse succeed in beyond like what they are today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your wishes. For me personally as well, I think it's not very often that you find conversations that also get you to start thinking. I think there was something very uncanny and relatable between our conversations, which just made it very comfortable. So for that, great job hosting. I also absolutely love how with your podcast, you guys are so diverse in the kind of conversations you're having, because the way of that Pehla Crore can be so different for so many people, can be in so many sectors, so many choices that are, completely opposite. And you're covering that base, which I think really does justice to what you guys are trying to do. So just for that and for being a seeker, absolutely honored to be here. I look forward to what more you put out.
Thank you. And one last question, I think it might be a little abrupt. You can choose not to answer it, but how long did it take Studio Carbon to earn their first crore?
We did it in the second year itself. If I was, in terms of if I was to talk about annual revenues, we hit our annual revenue of crossing a CR in our second year. Again, just bootstrapped. So
that's pretty great. And like in 5 years, then you've done 180 clients now. And I think that's a great thing great accomplishments to have. I will refer a lot of people to Studio Carbon now. I can find they can choose to work with you, and you can choose to work with them.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And I'll do the same, Osama. I'll do the same for your work in marketing. So
thank you.
Great.
I'll probably end this recording now.